It's awesome to be here today. I want to tell you 3 stories that summarize the origin of Urban Islands Project. The story 1 happened about 20 years ago, and it started with a phone call from my daughter when she was a student at Vanguard University in Southern California. "Dad," she said, "I think God is calling me to the city." Now, being a normal dad, I immediately began to think of the best strategy for talking her out of doing what she thought God was calling her to do. "Tell me more," I responded, hoping that I would find that deal breaker in what she said, that I could tell her, "Yeah, you're not going to do that." But her answer was, "Okay, I'm going to be working with this project called Mission Year. We're going to move into an underserved community with a team of students, and we will have 4 responsibilities. Number 1 is I'll be able to continue my education." Okay, that's good. Number 2, we will be assisting with the mission of a local neighborhood church in that city neighborhood. I like that. Can't argue with that. Number 3, we'll be serving in a community service project. Each of the kids would be serving in a different community service project. I like that. 4th, we will be loving our neighbors. Now, the first 3 were tangible enough that I thought, okay, this sounds like the real deal. I'm going to help her. I want her to go. But honestly, I thought the loving your neighbor thing sounded like a fuzzy, intangible bullet point that gave Mission Year something to say, yeah, we're gonna love our neighbors. That was my cynical response to that statement. After she'd been in Atlanta for 10 months, we were finally able to go visit her, which is where she went to a neighborhood just to the west or east of downtown Atlanta. And, we went around and visited, we got to see what she'd been talking about. So we visited with the team that she'd been with in their little house in this very scary urban neighborhood. We went to the little neighborhood church. I met the pastor. He invited me to preach on Sunday. It was kind of cool. And then we went to the community service project, which was a halfway house for homeless families, and she was doing the children's programming for all of the kids that were there with the homeless families, and they loved her. They said they had nothing but good to say about her. And so by the time we'd done those 3 things, my wife and I were bursting with pride and excitement about what my daughter was involved in and how it was, not only was she being a change agent, but it was changing her. It was powerful. And I kind of jokingly said, "Okay, show me the loving your neighbor thing," because I really didn't think that was going to be tangible. And she smiled and said, "I'll be happy to do that." So we went to the house next door, knocked on the door. This older lady came to the door and she said, "Oh, Lindsay, what are you doing here? It's not Friday." I said, "What happens on Friday?" She said, "Oh, your daughter comes by every Friday and washes my hair and fixes it so I'm ready for the weekend." And then we left there and we went to the next house and knocked on the door, and a middle-aged woman came to the door and she said, "Oh, Lindsay, I was going to call you. Brian passed the test. He's going to be able to get that job." And I said, "What's this about?" And she said, "Your daughter taught my husband how to read." 20 houses later, times the 6 kids who were living, 120 homes in that neighborhood were receiving on a weekly basis a direct, tangible representation of the love of God. And I realized what I was looking at is this is how you change the world. And the takeaway from this story is that love wins. There's a reason that Jesus said that all the law and the prophets are summed up in 2 commandments. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, which is the equal. He said it's the second and equal to the first. And I realized that we've been doing a decent job. I was a church planting leader for the Assemblies of God in a region, and we've been doing a decent job of starting churches that focused on loving God, but starting churches that love God and authentically love their neighbors, not so much. I wondered what it would take for the church to be present, loving God and neighbors in every neighborhood in America. That dream followed and inspired me for the next 14 years. The prevailing model of starting churches was very effective at gathering people who love God, but churches started with the strategy of authentically loving their neighbors were few and far between, especially in hard city places. In city neighborhoods, as the density of the population goes up, the presence of the church tends to go down. And this should not be. We need to be reaching the people that live in the cities. So the second story is about a group of courageous church planters who decided to choose obedience over everything else. In the summer of 2015, after serving 8.5 years as the founding director of Church Multiplication Network and assisting with the startup of 2,500 churches in mostly receptive American communities, I was ready to take on the challenge of activating transformational teams in city neighborhoods. My wife and I obeyed God's call, blew up our perfectly good job as the director of Church Multiplication Network, and moved into a downtown Denver to pursue this idea of activating city teams and figure out how to do it in the city firsthand. Miraculously, we were able to find 7 church planting leaders and their families who each moved into a different city neighborhood in the same city at the same time, inside the city limits of Denver, and their intention was to love their neighbors, make disciples, and preside over the emergence of a custom-built church for that context. This is a picture of a party that we threw when everybody arrived in Denver in August of 2015. These are the families, and we're getting ready to go into 7 different neighborhoods and start 7 different churches specifically for those neighborhoods. My takeaway, following that was the beginning of the process of helping to plant churches in many other communities throughout the country. So we started in Denver, we've been in Minneapolis, New York, all over the country, and helping people start churches in city neighborhoods. My takeaway from that story is that loving God by tangibly loving our neighbors is a key component of an authentic multiplication movement. And man, 10 minutes goes by fast. So let me get to the third story really quick. This is a picture of my friend Carl Johnson. He and his wife Melanie are one of the 50 that have been helped by Urban Islands Project to start in a city neighborhood. They thought they were called to just to be a pastor of an existing church, but God moved their hearts and spoke to them about going to an urban neighborhood. That was 5 years ago. Now they are leading Faith City Church in Dayton's Bluff. We helped them understand the difference between what they were doing, what they thought church planting was, and what it actually needed to be effective in an urban environment. So let me just cut to the chase. We have put our learnings into this book, Next Wave, which I'm going to give to one of you guys if you'll vote for me, okay? So just let me let you know that right up front. So the bottom line is we've learned some things that are crucial. We've got a framework of 12 shifts that people need to make to be effective in the 21st century culture that is being invented in the cities. And we are delivering and supporting and complementing the efforts of sending organizations, denominations, network, churches, anybody that says we care about people in the hard places, we want to go there well and in a sustainable way. We are able to help them do that, and we do that in 4 ways. One is we do that with the Urban Islands Project cohorts. We bring people that are called to hard places together into a year-long cohort journey where they learn together. And we've done that so far with 50 communities, probably about 8 or 9 cohorts over the last 3 years. The cost for that is about $2,500 per project for them to be a part of that. We also now, the Next Wave book gives us a way to quickly bring people up to speed with how to engage in an urban or a hard place. Next Wave Online Community is a real-time learning community that we've created, and people can be part of that. And so we have that. It's a growing number of practitioners, over 100 now that are on that community, learning from each other, accelerating the learning curve. And finally, the Next Wave Consulting and Coaching. Most new churches are started within the framework of a denomination or some kind of network. And so we exist to complement that. We don't ask them to leave their denomination. They're not joining Urban Islands Project. We're supporting them as they go. So the great news for the body of Christ is that we've actually already paid the price to acquire the knowledge and expertise needed for church organizations to pivot into the future and be the church in the hard places. And we want to get that message out. It's too important to be kept to ourselves. So what I'm asking you for today is to help us get that message out, to help us connect with people who need to know how to go and not be a fatality on the side of the road because they didn't understand how to go to a hard place. Your financial partnership will help us scholarship participation in the cohorts and the Next Wave community and maybe get the book into the hands of some people. So we want to lower the bar to participation in that. We stand ready to help them go, and as we go to the hard places together, we'll discover the way forward for the church to love God and our neighbors in every place